Hi everyone, I'm Dina with Mills Family Gardening. We live in North Texas, Zone 8A, and in this video we'll be talking about lazy gardening. We all are busy. I'm a busy homeschooling mom. My main goal and priority is to educate my children. It takes a lot of time. So if I want to garden, I need to find ways so that I can garden lazy and reap a good harvest of my work. There are several ways to implement lazy gardening, and in this video we'll be talking about one of them, and that is letting your plants, flowers and vegetables reseed year after year. And this year I've discovered a few surprises in our garden that was the result of lazy gardening, and I will show them a little bit later. But I would like to show you that a lot of flowers like zinnias, for example, and marigolds reseed easily. Look at all these beautiful flowers and colors, and I did not plant a single flower in this bed. They all came up on their own from the flowers that grew here last year and dropped seed. Now if you want to be a little more intentional, you can find flowers that stopped blooming and are dry now, so you can harvest this flower head, and if you want it in a certain spot in the garden, simply sprinkle this flower head wherever you want in that spot, and then next year most likely it will all come up in that spot. But if you don't have time for that, you can simply leave them on their own, let them do their own thing. The flowers will bloom and dry out, and all those seeds will drop on the ground voluntarily, and then they will sprout wherever they fell in the ground. The exact same thing happened with all these marigolds. I did not plant a single one of them. This variety is called French dwarf marigolds. We had a small row here last year. They all dropped seed, and all these seeds came up this year. Aren't they gorgeous? These gomphrenias just recently started blooming, and I did not plant a single seed. Last year I dropped the dried flowers here. I didn't have time to do anything with them, so I just threw all the dried plants here, and this year all these seedlings came up, and now they all are blooming. They're beautiful. Now they are blooming a little bit later than the seeds that I started indoors back in January and February. Nevertheless, they're beautiful and they love the heat, and as they grow, they'll be blooming more. The tall zinnias that we have here also came up on their own from last year's flowers. I did not plant a single one of them. We have a few of them sprinkled throughout the garden, but this is the place where most seeds came up, and they all look beautiful, and I did not do any work to plant them. I did not plant a single Cosmo flower in this raised bed, and yet they all came up from last year's flowers that dropped seed. And you can see that right now a lot of flowers are sending seeds. They're drying out, so what I can do is just sprinkle them where I want them to grow. If I want them to grow in this raised bed, I can sprinkle them back into the raised bed. If I want them to just drop seeds voluntarily wherever they want to, I can let them do that. It's really up to you and how much time you have on hand. You might think that I planted all these beautiful purple, white and pink petunias here on purpose in a row, but the truth is that I did not touch a single one of them. They all came up from seeds that got dropped last year from last year's flowers. And now look at this beautiful row of petunias that are blooming in our Texas heat. And the same thing applies to Rudbeckia, all these yellow flowers that you can see here. I think the variety is called Rudbeckia hirta, but I don't know exactly if it was from a packet with the mixture of seeds, but I did not plant a single seed this year. They all came up from seeds from flowers that grew here last year. If you want your Rudbeckia to reseed easily, you can simply leave them the way they are, let them dry out. The dried flower heads will drop on the ground, and when it's moist enough and the temperature is right, the seeds will start sprouting up. Or you can use those dried flower heads and place them in places in your garden where you want them to sprout and grow. Our calendula are done blooming for the season because there are cool weather flowers and it's getting too hot. But you can see that a lot of calendula flowers already have seeds, and the seeds dropped on the ground, and now we have a few seedlings of calendula, and if I help them survive through our Texas summer, and they will bloom in the fall, and they might even live till next year. Let's talk about herbs that can easily reseed themselves. One of them is dill. This dill in particular, I did not plant it. It came up on its own. The seed must have got blown into this raised bed, either by wind or maybe brought by a bird. But anyway, it sprouted here. I've used it in cooking. I have a few dills in this in-ground bed that came up on their own. And now you can see that this dill is going to seed. So if I leave it here, I'm not going to touch it, the seed will drop, and then all the seeds will start sprouting in the fall, and I will have dill in the fall. I'm doing the same thing with cilantro. The old plant died and dried out. So instead of throwing it into the compost pile, I simply threw the old plant right here in this in-ground bed, and you can see how all the seeds dropped on the ground. You can see all these little round seeds. And so when the temperature is right, when it cools down and the moisture is right, and of course it's always moist here, the seeds will start sprouting, and in the fall we'll have more cilantro, and I wouldn't have to plant them at all. All the beautiful purple flowers that you can see here are basil. I did not plant a single seed this year. The seeds from last year dropped on the ground and they all came up this year. I know there's a lot of plants and they're crowding out okra, but I simply cannot bring myself to cutting them down. They're so beautiful and bees love them. Another aspect of lazy gardening is planting perennial herbs, and one of them is oregano. It's growing here in North Texas. It's perennial, and I think it's a perennial in zones 5 through 9, I believe, and it's blooming right now. And the same thing applies to common sage. It grows in the other part of our garden. It's also perennial here. So growing perennial herbs is a very big help and factor in lazy gardening. If you look down, you can see a lot of melon vines here, and believe it or not, I did not plant a single seed of cantaloupe here, and you can see one melon growing. I believe it's a cross between elongated melon and some round variety. I think last year they got cross-pollinated, and so last year we had a melon growing and got rotten on the vine. I let it stay on the vine and left it alone, and the seeds must have dropped on the ground, and in the spring they all came up while we had onions growing in this patch, and we still have a few onions growing right here. We have not harvested all of them. And while our onions were growing, this melon started growing, and I thought, well, we'll just keep it in the ground. And I asked my daughters to harvest onions carefully and not to damage melon plants, and they did. And now we have this beautiful patch of melons growing, and I did not plant a single one of them. Don't these cucumber vines look impressive? And believe it or not, I did not plant a single seed of them this year. Last year, we had some cucumbers growing here, and I didn't have time to harvest all of them. Some of them got really yellow and got dropped on the ground, and they stayed through the winter on the ground. And this year the seeds from that cucumber, from one single cucumber, came up, and if you come close, then you can see, hopefully, that a clump of cucumbers are growing from the same spot here. I noticed they came up early in the spring. I did not pay much attention to them. I didn't think they would survive because we had another freeze coming. I thought they would die, but they all survived, and they all looked so green and lush, probably from all the fertilizer that we used to irrigate our garden with. And they just kept growing. Eventually they climbed up the trellis that we have here, and we've been eating all these cucumbers. The variety is called National Pickling. I missed on harvesting this cucumber. We've been eating quite a few cucumbers. You can see that they all are looking so healthy and green, and I did not have to plant a single seed of cucumbers this year. The watermelon vine that you have here is the one that came up on its own. I did not plant seeds here at all. Last year we had a few watermelons growing here, and I left a few watermelons on the vines because a freeze was coming up and I didn't think they were ready to be harvested, so I left them on the vine. Eventually they dropped the seed, and then the seeds sprouted this year. It was a big surprise to discover them this year, but now they're so large and long, and they're even producing fruit. For example, right here we have a little watermelon fruit growing, and I think we have about 4 or 5 of them here on the vines. I did start new seeds of watermelon this year, but right now they're only about 5 inches tall, so they're a long way away from bearing fruit. This tomato plant came up on its own this spring. The variety is called Florida Everglades. I did not plant it this year. I did plant other seeds, but not this one, and it survived all the late freezes, and now we have tiny little tomatoes here, you know, Florida Everglades. They are very small, but they're very delicious also. And they can survive Texas summers. They keep producing through Texas summers. They're a great tomato. In a few spots in our garden, especially along this trellis where we had loofah growing last year, I can notice several seedlings. All these are seedlings of loofah, and the seeds got dropped on the ground on their own and now are coming up. I did not plant a single seed of loofah this year. So all these plants coming out of the ground, they are volunteer seedlings that I did not plant. And if you come closer and look at this loofah that stayed here from last year and up until now, and all the seeds you can see inside of the loofah, because we had so much rain, all the seeds started germinating and sprouting. They're the black seeds and little seedlings that are growing from all those seeds. That's the way to do lazy gardening. Lazy gardening does not create pristine looking gardens. But if your goal is to grow any kind of vegetable or fruit or flowers in any fashion just to have them in your garden, then lazy gardening is the way to go. But lazy gardening can also lead to some bad mistakes when it comes to invasive species. For example, this Cabiosa, I think it's called black knight, it spreads like fire. It overcrowds all the native plants, so be careful with invasive flowers. The same pertains to our morning glory. We grew morning glory along our trellis last year, and this year I'm fighting thousands of seedlings along the trellis, and I don't want any morning glory in our garden anymore, so I'm trying to pull out all those seedlings. Now, Millie Blue Sage, it's a native flower, but it's very aggressive. It spreads aggressively by seed. It drops thousands of seeds on the ground, and the following spring you will pull up 1 million seedlings. So be aware there are plants that are invasive and also aggressive in the way they spread. And if you know that you're not going to be pulling a lot of seedlings, make sure you do not plant those flowers in the garden in the first place. I hope I've given you some ideas on how to do gardening in a lazy style if you're a busy person. It's sure helping me, and I'm grateful for the plants' abilities to reseed themselves year after year. Thank you so much for watching this video, and happy gardening!